Ukraine obliterates Russia's air defenses in $600 million blow and leaves the Kremlin exposed. Today, Ukraine has executed a coordinated operation that blinded Russia's most expensive air defense assets, contributing to what analysts estimate as more than $600 million in cumulative losses. A precision strike eliminated a long-range S-300 launcher, 2 advanced radar stations designed to detect stealth drones, and exposed vast corridors of Russian logistics that had previously been protected. At the same time, deep strike drones ignited fuel depots, shattered Moscow's claims of security in the Caucasus, and undermined the Kremlin's last sources of economic lifelines. The full severity of this collapse becomes clear only by returning to the first confirmed moment of action. At 7:14 a.m., Ukrainian military intelligence initiated the strike that would dismantle the most sensitive segment of Russia's air defense architecture in the occupied east. Operators targeted a key launcher inside a long-range S-300 system, one of the platforms Russia relies on to shield its positions from ballistic missiles and high-speed jets. This launcher, valued in the tens of millions, formed part of a network intended to hold Ukrainian aircraft at distance and protect the ammunition depots, bridges, and road corridors that support Russian operations. The attack was calibrated to neutralize not only the launcher, but also the nervous system that guides Russian radar awareness along the front. Minutes later, 2 radar systems Russia calls No SV, often described by troops as the all-seeing eye, were struck. These units specialize in detecting low-altitude and stealthy aircraft, including small drones that fly close to terrain features. By removing them, Ukraine degraded Russia's ability to conduct early warning detection, leaving high-value infrastructure exposed to follow-on strikes. The targeting pattern suggested a deliberate shaping operation. Ukraine aimed first to blind the observing sensors, then dismantle the shield, and only afterward exploit the gaps with missile systems such as Storm Shadow and Attack MS. By 8:03 a.m., Ukrainian analysts were already registering secondary effects. The absence of radar coverage forced Russian forces to divert mobile air defense vehicles away from frontline sectors toward rear area depots. This shift created corridors through which Ukrainian drones operated more safely. The destruction of the radar systems represented a direct strike against Russian situational awareness, raising Russia's vulnerability not only to missiles, but to reconnaissance flights that could now map additional targets without being tracked. At 8:20 a.m., one of the special correspondent teams inside the Donbass, returning from visits to sectors near Kramatorsk and Chasiv Yar, reported conversations with Ukrainian assault units who monitored the strike. They described the front as intense, dangerous, and heavy with drone presence on both sides, but insisted that Ukrainian morale remained stable. Operators noted that the drone war had become the dominant shaping factor of the battlefield. To stop drones was to stop attacks. To blind air defense radars was to rewrite the geometry of the sky. By 9:12 a.m., soldiers along the line confirmed that the removal of Russian radar coverage immediately reduced the number of Russian drones operating in the area. What remained were small, low-grade units that lacked the precision of Russia's elite reconnaissance platforms. Troops reported that Ukrainian drones were now able to access areas previously saturated with Russian jamming, allowing more effective target verification for incoming artillery and missile strikes. At 9:41 a.m., analysts monitoring thermal signatures across the occupied east detected anomalous heat blooms south of the strike area. These signatures, believed to be from emergency Russian fuel transfers, indicated that regional commanders feared follow-on attacks. Without radar support, they anticipated that Ukrainian missiles would soon target rail junctions, bridge crossings, and ammunition stockpiles that could no longer rely on real-time sensor coverage. The shaping operation had achieved its immediate purpose. Russian logistics nodes behind the front were now exposed. At 10:05 a.m., Ukrainian teams traveling through the Donbass observed new defensive adaptations by Russian forces. Roads in contested territories were increasingly covered with camouflage netting, an improvised method to obscure vehicle movement from overhead drones. These nets, once limited to supply points, now lined transit routes, demonstrating how deeply the drone threat had changed the nature of movement. The soldiers accompanying the correspondent emphasized that Ukrainian drones had saved lives precisely because they forced Russian forces into static positions where they could be more easily targeted. At 10:37 a.m., additional reports described a shift in Russian troop behavior. Surrenders were increasing, casualty rates were climbing, and frontline units described confusion regarding the larger operational plan. Soldiers spoke of a Russian military that now had no unified strategy for reversing battlefield losses, and lacked the industrial capacity to replace destroyed radar and launcher systems. Russia's inability to rebuild cutting-edge hardware meant that each Ukrainian strike carried disproportionate long-term consequences. At 11:16 a.m., the consequences of that vulnerability appeared far from the Donbass. Explosions were reported inside Chechnya, striking a military base belonging to the Akhmat Regiment, the private military force loyal to Ramzan Kadyrov. Chechnya, deep in the North Caucasus, lies hundreds of miles from the front. For decades, Moscow portrayed it as a stabilized region, immune to spillover from wars fought elsewhere. Yet a successful drone strike reached the heart of the strongman's defensive zone. The impact was immediate. It signaled that Russia's rear areas, stripped of defenses to reinforce the front, had become open terrain. At 11:52 a.m., analysts noted that Kadyrov's entire authority rested on his promise to keep war away from Chechnya. A strike inside his headquarters revealed the hollow nature of Russian domestic security. Local power brokers who depended on Kremlin protection now faced a new reality. The central government could no longer guarantee their safety. The stability of the North Caucasus, a region with a long history of resistance to Russian rule, hung in uncertain balance. At 12:18 p.m., satellite indicators confirmed another series of fires, this time in Russia's interior. A drone ignited a fuel depot in Orel Oblast, causing twin storage units to erupt into flames. Firefighters struggled to contain the blaze as it approached additional reserves. These facilities supply fuel to operations across Russia's western military district. Each burning depot reduced the volume of diesel and aviation fuel that could be transported toward the front. By 12:46 p.m., the Black Sea coast was also affected. Explosions rocked Novomysk near the Tuapse region, where more fuel storage infrastructure stood. Residents reported drones flying overhead seconds before impact. Tuapse plays a critical role in distributing fuel to the southern military district. Every tank destroyed there reduced the operational tempo Russia could sustain on fronts such as Zaporizhia. At 1:14 p.m., Ukrainian analysts calculated the combined effect of these operations, at least $120 million in radar and launcher hardware destroyed, with fuel infrastructure losses compounding the economic impact. The Russian General Staff now faced a fundamental dilemma: whether to concentrate air defense units around refineries, depots, and ports, or maintain coverage along the front. They lacked the systems and manpower to do both. Either choice accelerated battlefield collapse. At 1:52 p.m., the economic dimension deepened. Turkey significantly reduced its imports of Russian Urals crude, dropping intake by roughly 100,000 barrels per day. Turkish refineries, once major customers of Russian oil, were replacing their supply with crude from Kazakhstan and Iraq. This undermined Russia's ability to convert oil into foreign currency, a critical source of funding for its war effort. Moscow's financial ministries relied heavily on energy revenue to pay inflated salaries for contract soldiers. As imports fell, the ruble weakened further. By 2:25 p.m., maritime tracking data exposed further vulnerabilities. A Russian vessel struck near Turkish waters had traveled with its transponder disabled for 11 days, a common behavior among ships engaged in sanctions evasion. The vessel likely formed part of Russia's shadow fleet, transporting weapons or illicit fuel. Its destruction demonstrated that the Black Sea could no longer be described as a controlled Russian domain. Instead, it had become a contested zone where Ukrainian forces could disrupt economic and military shipments alike. At 2:58 p.m., Russia turned to information warfare to offset battlefield losses. State media announced the capture of towns including Prosk and Vovchansk. These claims were strategically timed to coincide with high-level diplomatic meetings involving American officials. Putin even staged a publicized command post visit to receive reports of supposed victories. But independent intelligence confirmed these gains did not occur. Russia had built a facade of momentum to conceal internal collapse, a modern version of the historical Potemkin village strategy, constructing illusions because genuine success was unattainable. At 3:27 p.m., military analysts explained that this disinformation campaign sought to influence US policymakers by portraying Russia as holding the initiative. In reality, Russia's frontline troops faced ammunition shortages, fuel disruptions, and a degrading air shield. They now fought under a command structure, struggling both to regain territory and to defend its own strategic depth. At 3:55 p.m., as diplomatic narratives clashed, Ukrainian forces continued to press their operational advantage on the ground. The removal of radar coverage allowed deeper reconnaissance into Russian rear positions. High-precision systems such as Storm Shadow and ATACMS could now engage targets previously guarded by overlapping radar zones. Ammunition depots, rail junctions, and command posts within occupied territory fell within effective strike windows. The battlefield showed clear evidence of a side gaining momentum through systematic degradation of its opponent's infrastructure. At 4:22 p.m., Ukrainian soldiers sent messages emphasizing that morale remained high. They credited wider access to drones and precision systems for enabling these breakthroughs. As winter approached, they noted that maintaining drone supply lines was essential to preventing Russia from regaining aerial dominance. At 4:50 p.m., economic analysts observing Moscow confirmed that Russia's financial situation was rapidly deteriorating. The loss of Turkish markets deprived Russia of billions in revenue. Combined with sanctions, destroyed air defense equipment, and burning fuel reserves, the financial pressure on Moscow intensified sharply. The Kremlin now faced the dual collapse of its battlefield prospects and its economic stability. By 5:16 p.m., observers concluded that Russia's domestic and military systems were reacting not with resilience, but with increasing fragmentation. The strikes from Donbass to Chechnya to the Black Sea illustrated a country unable to defend its own territory. Logistics networks frayed. Regional leaders questioned Moscow's authority. Energy income shrank, and the air defense network, the system designed to shield everything else, had been pierced and blinded. Today's operation was not a single strike, but a multi-layered dismantling of Russian capability. A blinded air defense network exposes supply lines. Exposed supply lines restrict fuel distribution. Reduced fuel limits operational tempo. Reduced operational tempo undermines morale. And collapsing morale erodes political authority. One action cascaded into many, revealing the structural weaknesses inside the Russian military system. Ukraine has likely inflicted more than $600 million in cumulative losses through destroyed radar systems, launchers, depots, and fuel infrastructure. Losses that Russia cannot readily replace under sanctions and economic isolation. As its defenses crack open and its logistical arteries burn, the question now is simple. How long can Russia sustain a war it is rapidly losing on every front? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to follow up.